Hello again. Today's walk I think is going to be the shortest perhaps that I ever record. I confess outside it's cold and blowy, and although I've actually sent off for a new microphone I can attach to this phone that'll resist the wind noise. It hasn't arrived yet, so I'm going to give you a short walk indoors. Here we are, right by our front door, the sanitizing station. And I thought I'd just walk with you first down the cloister corridor. Let me pause at points on this walk just to give us a little space for contemplative observation and quiet. View out of the window, partway down the corridor. Table tennis table, but far too blowy today for table tennis. And just below the window here, there are a couple of rather lovely candlesticks. These pottery candlesticks were a kind gift to us from someone who had herself been given them by the person they were made for. They were made for the late wife of Christopher Robin Milne, the man who was the original model of Christopher Robin in the Winnie the Pooh books. He didn't much like being thought of always as stuck as that child, but these came from his wife via our friend Ruku. Oh, as we go down here, I should just say that many of you watching this have one of these, a version of the circle of friends at home. I know, and many of you are lighting the candle in the middle daily to be with us in spirit as we do that in the chapel. And it's to the chapel that we're now going. There's a note with a smiley face saying close the door. One of the reasons we keep the door closed, apart from keeping the heat in, is because there's a bit of a hum just outside the chapel these days from all this wonderful kit. Those are the inverters which transform the signal from the... is it a signal? I don't know what the proper word is. But anyway, they transform what comes from the photovoltaic cells into energy that can be fed around to power our appliances, or when we don't need it all, go back into the grid. And even on a rather overcast day like this, they are working. So, into the chapel proper. Now, most of you know this room. Most people watching this, I imagine, know it, whether you've been here once or many times. Some people receiving our newsletters haven't been here for quite some years, so the chapel may have changed in appearance during that time. I'll indicate a few of those things as we go round. Oh, and I didn't swing all the way round so that you can see the chancel area as well. We'll come back there later on. As you come in the door, you notice there's a series of plaques on the wall. There are 8 of them all down this south wall. And they commemorate mainly women who were members of the first community here, before the Othona community, the community of Christian contemplatives, known as the White Ladies as well. There are a couple of men mentioned there too. This particular plaque is in memory of Sister Evelyn and her nephew, Alan Bendy, who died during the war. Erected by his family, the late John Bendy and Alison of the next generation, Othona members to this day. So we have those commemorations of people who were in this chapel all those years ago, because the chapel was built in 1937, at a time when the first community here was still hoping to flourish and grow. That's not how it turned out. This is the plaque commemorating Miss Curtis, Adela Marion Curtis, who was their founder and inspiring leader. She died in September 1960, and it was after that that the trustees of her community looked to find somebody else to take on the land and the buildings, and eventually offered it to the Othona community, and the rest is history. On the back wall, Miss Curtis would not recognise this. This is a triptych, a piece of wooden sculpture by the late Edward Robinson. Just going to open it up. Edward was keen that this shouldn't be opened too often. He felt that the form of a triptych, the whole point was that it only occasionally reveals briefly all the secrets of its interior, and mainly keeps its outward and perhaps more confusing face towards the public. But we open it perhaps more often than he would like, because many of us absolutely love the imagery of this beautiful piece of wood carving. He stayed with us for a period of months working on this in our old art room. There's a lot of wood carving in that. Okay, I'm going to close that up again. Whoops. Sound effect for you. There we are, Edward. We're back the way you'd want it to be most of the time. As we turn round, that's the door that leads out to a staircase which takes you up to the gallery above the back part of the chapel. Now that gallery would be a surprise to Miss Curtis as well, because this chapel was built as one large barn-like room. I say barn-like, look up at the ceiling. You get the roof, you get a little bit more idea of the scale of the place and the way it was built. And the story goes that at the stage when they just started to set out the marker pegs for the foundations to build this, Miss Curtis came out to look at them. And she said, "Oh, no, that will never do. My chapel must be twice that size." And the builders, without further consultation, doubled all the dimensions. So the floor area would, if that's true, the floor area would have turned out to be 4 times what Miss Curtis originally had planned and asked for, and the volume 8 times. So we're rather grateful for the scale of this chapel, but it may not have been exactly what the lady intended. If you know the chapel of old, if you haven't been here in recent years, you may be surprised to see a shiny oak floor. You may be surprised to see these big, very clear double-glazed windows. A lot has changed here, even since the mid-90s when I first arrived here. The floor has underfloor heating. It's switched off at the moment, of course, because it would be a terrible waste of energy, we felt, with only half a dozen of us here, to be heating it, even on cold days like this, and especially in some of the warm days we've been having recently. So the heating's been off since the beginning of lockdown. But we are here every morning. We begin by lighting the candle in our circle of friends. And then share our seed time, sitting together, largely in quiet, with a reading, often at the beginning and end. Sometimes we sing. And our time of quiet is started and finished with this. Now you may think we've got a rather lovely Tibetan bowl here. Not exactly. It is rather lovely, and I love the sound. But as some of you will know, if you lift it up, look at the bottom, it says Cala gas. This was made out of half of a Cala gas cylinder, which Mark Tebbs kindly engineered into this kind of gong bowl. And there's another one with our friends, the Pilsden community, not far away. And the striker it's an old chair leg actually. Thank you, Mart. I'll just sound it again because I think that sound is glorious. Our grand piano, unfortunately, none of the six of us here under lockdown can play. Thank you, Denise, who actually owns this and lets us have it on long loan. There is a music centre here, away in that cupboard. Oh, there's another work of art. Mustn't forget on the wall here. This representation of the reed bed you'd encounter at the bottom of the hill going from here towards the beach. Work of Elizabeth Sayers, one of our local trustees. That was one of Elizabeth's first forays into textile art, which is now a major part of her life. And under normal circumstances, this weekend, you would have been able to wander in this chapel because it would have been the final weekend of Dorset Art Weeks, when every other year, for the past few years, we have been transforming this chapel and the adjoining Quiet Room Library into exhibition space for Othona artists. This year, of course, plans for that had to be abandoned. The county-wide art festival is not happening after all. As we step into the chancel, I look up and see, I don't know whether you can see it, signs of places where the ivy is getting in at the eaves. Ivy that's grown up the walls outside. This chapel, nature seems to constantly try and get in, which I think is no bad thing. Sometime in the next few weeks we're almost bound to have ants swarming up the wall over here. They do every year. There's an ant nest underneath, and though some of them get out and fly on their flying day, the other side of the wall, some of them invariably try and escape through the chapel here. There's nothing we can do about it, unfortunately. And the ivy tries to come in up at the eaves till we cut it back, and of course lots of spiders and woodlice and so on find themselves into their way into an old building like this. Many butterflies, bats. We do have bats that frequent the high places in this chapel. And we see signs of them sometimes in the morning. Then they disappear for a few weeks, and then they'll be back. We don't mind that. The window, the high window at the back, in recent months particularly, we've had a crow that attacks that again and again with its beak, bang, 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 trying to get in. Seems to choose particularly the time when we're sitting in quiet prayer and meditation in the mornings. I wonder what it is he wants to join in with, he or she. Finally, this is a new addition. Very few people will have seen. We've had the spiral candle holder for some time. Thank you, Michael, who gave us that. It's just recently we've decided to place it here all the time so that there's somewhere for anybody, one of us or somebody passing through, even somebody just visiting briefly, to light a candle with whatever intention they have. This one is lit today for one of our friends with a medical problem, not COVID-19 as it happens. And we keep a list in the chapel for people who we're particularly asked to hold in our hearts and minds in prayer and concern. So I hope you've enjoyed a very different and very short walk. I've not gone into the library, which is down at the other end of the chapel, beyond that door. Well, actually, let's go down there. Why not briefly have a look in there? This is a very calm room. You can hear the acoustics very different the moment I step in. Plenty of books. I must say I'm wondering, with the experience of all that's been going on during the lockdown, whether it's time we just thought about how better we should equip for using more digital resources. People coming to Othona often are very glad to get away from their own computers and their televisions. But just on occasion to have good access to a range of digital resources for teaching and discussion purposes, I think might be something we look at alongside all the books. And the view from this window is across towards the lodge, the chalet-style building there where some of the core members live. So I'm just going to return to the chancel, the holy end, as I say, of the chapel, to finish this walk. We have two trees, if you like. The tree of the cross and the depiction of the tree of life. And here on the table, a simple stone from the beach with a painted message. And that's what I will leave you with at the end of this walk.